10 years after Bloodborne's release, I still find myself learning new things and making all sorts of insightful revelations almost every time I play. The game is simply overflowing with secrets, and today I want to share some of my favorite discoveries with you. I know that Bloodborne has been extensively covered at this point, but I am confident that I can still teach you something new. If by some chance you don't learn a single thing in the entirety of this video, then feel free to leave a dislike or write a comment telling me how stupid I am. With that preamble out the way, let's begin. Did you know that after killing Rom and revealing the Mensis ritual, the Red Moon actually only appears in a select few areas, namely Central Yharnam, Cathedral Ward, Yahar'gul the Unseen Village, and the Hunter's Dream once the moon presence descends? It's fairly obvious why the Red Moon doesn't appear in the other nightmare realms, but the answer becomes less clear when we look at the rest of the waking world. Hemwick Charnel Lane, the Forbidden Woods, Byrgenwerth, Castle Cainhurst, and Old Yharnam have all been seemingly spared from the pale blood moon. So why is this the case? Well, all the aforementioned areas excluding Old Yharnam are located outside the city of Yharnam, so perhaps it's related to where the Mensis ritual was conducted and subsequently where the moon presence was drawn to. This theory would definitely make more sense if the Red Moon was visible in Old Yharnam, but strangely, it's not. We know that the Red Moon descended on Old Yharnam once before, so it really is odd why it is not present there now. Perhaps it's because Old Yharnam was abandoned and technically no longer considered a part of the main city. Whatever the case may be, the Red Moon only appearing in certain areas makes one think if its beast-inducing and reality-bending effects are also limited to these places. The so-called lesser amygdalas that we see hanging from buildings are only present in two areas in the game, Cathedral Ward and the Unseen Village, and notably, both of these areas are illuminated by the Red Moon. Just before we enter Oedon Chappel, we find a note that reads, "The Byrgenwerth spider hides all manner of rituals and keeps our lost master from us. A terrible shame, it makes my head shudder uncontrollably." Many have theorized that the lost master in this note is referring to Master Willem. However, this doesn't really make sense, as Rom is in no way preventing Willem from leaving Byrgenwerth. Others have claimed that the lost master is in fact Mikolash, leader of the School of Mensis, meaning that the note may have been written by a Mensis scholar. This theory definitely has more merit, but an even more obvious answer becomes apparent when we look at the Japanese text. The spider of Byrgenwerth is hiding every ritual, even our unseeable or invisible lord. With this retranslation, I think it's quite obvious that this unseeable lord is the Great One Amygdala. The School of Mensis are avid worshippers of Amygdala, and Rom the vacuous spider prevents anyone who lacks insight from seeing the Great One. Amygdala is perhaps one of the most mysterious entities in Bloodborne. It is unclear whether this creature is a single hive mind Great One or an entire species. As mentioned in my previous video, there seems to be conflicting evidence for either theory. But since then, I have made a rather interesting discovery. All the amygdalas that we encounter have 4 arms on their right side, but only 3 on their left. This struck me as quite odd when I first noticed it. It is not often that you see such asymmetry in From Software's design, but this was undoubtedly an intentional decision. Spiders typically have 8 limbs, and amygdalas very obviously bear a resemblance to spiders. So why is it that they only have 7 arms protruding from their back? Well, on closer inspection of the left side of the creature's back, we see what appears to be a fleshy groove, where an arm was possibly previously attached. It is likely that Amygdala originally had 8 arms, but lost one of them long ago. This could also be where the Amygdalan arm weapon originated from. If we accept this theory, that would mean that all the amygdalas that we encounter are in some way linked and originated from a singular being at some point in time. Putting this theory aside, have you ever wondered why certain amygdalas will try to attack you while others are more passive? Well, The answer actually lies within the Great One's name. Amygdala, or rather, the amygdala, is a small almond-shaped structure found in your brain. One of the amygdala's key functions is processing and responding to stimuli, especially those associated with threat or danger. The reason why certain amygdalas don't attack you is likely because they do not view you as a threat at that point in time. Think about it. When we encounter the amygdalas in the cathedral ward, there is literally nothing we can do to harm or affect them. However, when we travel to Yahagul, they get more aggressive and begin shooting lasers at us. This is because we are attempting to stop the Mensis ritual, which is effectively what is allowing them to enter our plane. Lastly, when we encounter Amygdala in the Chalice dungeons or the Nightmare Frontier, the Great One goes berserk and does everything in its power to crush us. This is likely because we have been deemed as a significant threat due to us entering the Nightmare Realm, a place not meant for ordinary humans. Did you know that a large number of Great Ones and their kin possess wings? The most obvious instances would be Abritus, Murgo's wet nurse, and the Orphan of Kos in his second phase. But that's not all. It might be difficult to notice in the fight with the Moon Presence, but Pale Blood too has a tiny set of wings. Whether Amygdala has wings is more debatable. There seems to be some fleshy growths jutting out the creature's back, which could possibly indicate early sproutings of wings. So what do these wings mean anyway? Are they simply a design choice? Or is there a deeper meaning behind them? Well, in typical media, wings often symbolize divinity and beings of a higher existence, which makes sense given that the Great Ones and some of their kin are revered as gods. But this raises the question, why do some Great Ones have wings and others don't? It can't possibly be an indicator of cosmic power, as even lesser kin like the Garden of Eyes and the Celestial Chorin possess wings. Perhaps I'm looking too deeply into things, or perhaps I just don't have enough insight to fully understand it yet. Either way, wings are at the very least exclusive to beings of a cosmic nature, and seemingly hold deep symbolic meaning. In the concept art for the Moon Presence, we can see several messengers emerging from the Great One's body. This seemingly implies that the messengers are the Moon Presence's creations, which makes sense given the striking resemblance between the creatures. As you know, messengers serve the hunter of the dream, but they also seem to have other purposes. Winter lanterns, crawlers, and the brain of Mensis are all to some degree comprised of messengers. This has some interesting implications about what role the Moon Presence played in the creation of these beings. All three of the aforementioned creatures are exclusive to the Nightmare Realms, and although we never encounter the Moon Presence anywhere outside the hunter's dream, it is quite apparent that the nightmares we encounter in the game are connected. Many players would have noticed by now that you can spot both the Nightmare of Mensis and the fishing hamlet from the Nightmare Frontier, implying that the dreamlands we encounter exist in some form of interconnected realm. The only dreamland that is not visible from one of the nightmares is the hunter's dream. I initially thought that this was because there may be a difference in how dreams and nightmares work, but the Japanese text actually refers to the hunter's dream as a nightmare. This leads me to believe that the hunter's dream is either at the very top or bottom of all the other nightmares. Based on the numerous pillars surrounding the area, I theorized that the hunter's dream serves as a base or foundation for all other nightmares, with the pillars acting as support structures. In light of the discovery that messengers originate from the Moon Presence, we can now finally gain some insight about the mysterious connection between the doll and the Winter Lanterns. As many have pointed out, the doll and the Winter Lantern share many similarities between their designs, particularly in terms of their clothing and build structure, excluding the head of course. This has left many players wondering what links these two beings. Well, I propose a simple theory. We know that it was the Moon Presence that brought German's doll to life, and that messengers seemingly arise from the Great One. We also know that the winter lanterns encompass characteristics of both the doll and the messengers, so I don't think it would be a stretch to say that they are creations of the moon presence, perhaps even failed creations, discarded and left to wander the nightmare realms. This is supported by the internal file name of the winter lanterns in the pre-release build of the game, which was failures to become messengers. Most players would have noticed that after defeating Obritus in the depths of the Grand Cathedral, there lies a strange structure that resembles Rom, the vacuous spider. The structure is referred to as the Altar of Despair, and has left many of us clueless as to what it is. When we first find Obritus, she seems to be mourning the structure, and its only purpose in the game is to resurrect Annalise after she is beaten into a pulp by Alfred.
There, you filthy monstrosity!
So what does this all mean? Well, I propose that this structure is the corpse of Rom after she died in the waking world. Just like the Great Ones, after dying in our plane of existence, Rom's consciousness was taken to a dreamland, the Moonside Lake. While the lake is undoubtedly separate from our reality, it is still not a fully fledged dreamland like the other nightmares in the game. This is likely because Rom is not a true Great One, and thus did not have the power to create such. The reason why Obritus is mourning the corpse of Rom is likely because they shared some sort of bond as kin Great Ones. And now that Rom has departed from our world, Obritus feels abandoned yet again. The last part of this mystery arises from the strange ability that Rom's corpse possesses. By offering Annalise's queenly flesh to the altar, we get the message, "Time flows in reverse for this scrap of flesh." This tells us that Rom's corpse has some sort of time-bending power. So why is this the case? Well, looking at the concept art for the game, we see that the Altar of Despair was originally meant to serve as an entrance to the Land of Eyes. This was obviously scrapped from the final game, but it is still likely that this area, along with the altar, was originally part of the Chalice Dungeons. The Chalice Dungeons gives us a glimpse at certain parts of the labyrinth at particular points in time. In a way, we are time traveling by accessing these places. So if we link this to Rom's corpse, the time-bending abilities can be somewhat explained. I hope that made at least a bit of sense. Irreverent Izzy is one of Bloodborne's most enigmatic characters. He is creator of both the Beast Claw and the Beast Roar, but we never actually encounter him in-game, or at least, it's not clear that we do. Based on the description and location of the Beast Claw, we can surmise that he was a tomb prospector employed by the Healing Church, and that he made his way to the land of ailing Laurence. Izzy seemed to have a fascination with dark beasts, and it's quite possible that he ended up becoming one himself. In the Forbidden Woods, we find Izzy's hunted tool of choice, the Beast Roar, as well as a very peculiar character called the Afflicted Beggar. The beggar is drenched in blood and appears to be devouring the corpse of a child. He wears the madman's leggings, which are said to be the attire of tomb prospectors who lost their sanity in the labyrinths. Upon attacking the beggar, he transforms into this abhorrent dark beast that just so happens to be present in ailing Laurence. With all this in mind, it is highly likely that this afflicted beggar is none other than Irreverent Izzy, who lost his mind in the labyrinth and ended up transforming into the abhorrent beast. Izzy is unique in the fact that he is able to revert back to his human form after transforming, which to my knowledge is the only instance of this happening in the game. He also holds the ability to coherently speak in his beast form, which is something he shares with only one other beast. It is abundantly clear that Izzy is no ordinary human, and is perhaps the closest humanity has come to mastering the power of the beast. Prior to the release of the Old Hunters DLC, it seems likely that Laurence was originally meant to have been the Bloodletting beast found in the Chalice Dungeons. The Bloodletting beast has two encounterable variants in the dungeons, the second of which is a headless version located deeper within the labyrinth. Based on the nature of the Chalice Dungeons, these are likely depictions of the same beast, just at different points in time. The implication of the headless variant is that the creature's head along with its skull was taken away. And as you know, Laurence's beastly skull is found in the church's Grand Cathedral. Comparing the head of the bloodletting beast to the skull in the Grand Cathedral, we can see quite a few similarities between them. Most notable is the large gash on the left side of both the beast's face and the skull. Despite this very much apparent connection, the description of Laurence's skull from the DLC says that in reality he became the first cleric beast. And unfortunately, the bloodletting beast does not match that description. The key defining trait of cleric beasts seems to be their antlers, and the bloodletting beast does not have any. Furthermore, Laurence's appearance in the Hunter's Nightmare very much matches that of a cleric beast, and I can't really think of a good reason why he would manifest differently in the nightmare. In any case, I find the theory of Laurence being the bloodletting beast to be highly interesting, especially considering that its name in Japanese is host of the beast blood. Host in this sense does not mean source. The word is used in the same way to describe Mikolash as the host of the Nightmare of Mensis, meaning protector or custodian. This again would very much fit with Laurence's character, and does make me question why From Software abandoned this original idea. Did you know that when you are invaded by the Healing Church assassin Brador, his model actually transforms into something much younger? This seems to have been an intentional decision, as not only does his model change, but also does his attire. When we find Brador in his cell, the right horn on his headpiece is broken, but when he invades us as his younger self, it is complete. So, what does this mean? Does Brador have the ability to bend time? Well, the answer is likely related to the Bell of Death given to him by the Healing Church. It looks similar to the sinister resonant bell, but quite obviously has different properties. Perhaps upon invading a hunter's world, the bell temporarily restores Brador to his prime, allowing him to fight at full capacity. Whatever the reason is, I thought it was an interesting little detail included by FromSoft that a lot of players may have missed. The Hunter's Mark actually has a lot of hidden meaning behind it. It is described as a dangling upside-down rune, and very much resembles the corpse of a hung headless body. For Hunters of the Dream, there is an even deeper meaning, as by focusing on this mark, you lose all your blood echoes and awaken afresh. In a similar vein, by beheading a person and hanging them upside down, you are draining their body of all its blood, and perhaps even allowing them to pass on to the next life. Despite its name, the Hunter's Mark long predates hunters. We can find the mark scattered in numerous places throughout the Chalice dungeons, suggesting that this mark was merely adopted by the hunters after discovering it in the labyrinths. Given that the Hunter's Mark also exists in the form of a Carol rune, it means that it almost certainly originated from the words of the Great Ones. The Hunter's rune describes hunters as watchmen who admonish those who have become addled with blood, be they men or beasts. This seems to suggest that perhaps it was one of the Great Ones who inspired Gurman to become the first hunter and establish the Hunters. Have you ever wondered what these strange-looking figures part of the Healing Church are? Just based on their appearance, they are clearly not human, but at the same time, don't look like beasts. So what are they? Well, it seems likely that they are Pthumerians who migrated to the surface. The Pthumerians are an ancient race of people who occupied the labyrinths beneath Yharnam. Through their contact with the Great Ones, they acquired superhuman abilities that prolonged their life. Pthumerians possess a very distinct look. They are extremely pale to the point where they look undead, and have very large inhuman frames. Though it is never confirmed, the church giants, church servants, and even Martyr Logarius match these descriptions. All three of these enemies also happen to be a part of the Healing Church, which makes one think just what type of connection the church had to the Pthumerians. We know for certain that the School of Mensis worked with the Pthumerians, as indicated by the presence of the bell-ringing woman and kidnappers in the unseen village. Perhaps the idea for this collaboration originated from the church. The Oedon Chappel Dweller may not be as innocent as you think. Despite his kind and well-meaning demeanor, it seems that he might harbor darker intentions, even if he himself is unaware of it. As his name suggests, the Oedon Chappel Dweller is the last remaining resident of Oedon Chapel, and the description of the Oedon Tomb Key states that the residents of Oedon have all gone mad, or in Japanese, it's said that all those who inhabit Oedon become unscrupulous. We can fairly confidently say that the Oedon Chappel Dweller is a worshipper of the Great One Oedon, just based on his location and the fact that he drops a formless Oedon rune. But there may also be another clue. The name Oedon may derive from the Greek word Oedipism, which refers to the self-removal of one's eyes. And looking at the eyes of the Oedon Chappel Dweller, they are very clearly damaged in some way. In any case, the Chapel Dweller seems to be oddly fixated on bringing others to the chapel, to the point where it feels forced and somewhat unnerving.
If you find any sane survivors, tell them to come on over, if you wouldn't mind. Because there's nothing to fear here.
I believe this is due to the influence of the Great One Oedon. Like all the other Great Ones, Oedon desires a replacement for his lost child, and is thus using the Chapel Dweller to lure potential bearers to his place of worship. This is why Ariana becomes pregnant after she moves to the chapel. It doesn't seem like the Chapel Dweller is aware that he is being manipulated, although he could just be a very convincing liar. The Orphan of Kos has one of the most grotesque and unsettling designs in the game, especially considering that he is supposed to represent an infant. But this is almost certainly not how he looked in the waking world, and rather just a manifestation of Kos's will in the nightmare. From the Japanese text of the game, the name Orphan of Kos could have actually been translated in a number of different ways. The localization team obviously went with the most literal meaning, but I find the other translations to be more interesting. Orphan of Kos could also be translated as the will or echoes of Kos, which indicates two additional purposes. Firstly, the Orphan of Kos is an extension of Kos's will, being used as a means to punish those who have become drunk with blood. Secondly, the Orphan represents Kos's dying wish, which was for her unborn child to be granted life. Aside from being one of the most challenging bosses in the game, the Orphan of Kos also contains a very key detail to the lore that many might have missed in the intense boss fight. If we examine the umbilical cord on the Orphan's stomach and trace it around its back, we can actually see that the cord has been cut. This tells us that in addition to the mass slaughterings Byrgenwerth committed at the fishing hamlet, they also seem to have harvested the umbilical cord from Kos's child. When we encounter Master Willem at Byrgenwerth, we see these strange fungus-like growths protruding from his back. These are undoubtedly a result of his experiments with the arcane. But in his original concept art, his appearance is much more distorted. He is almost melting into his chair and bears a striking resemblance to the slime scholars in the lecture building. It is likely that they were undergoing similar experiments before the lecture building was transported to the nightmare. We know that the lecture building was once a part of Byrgenwerth, but where it was exactly is unclear. The only place I can think of is past the lookout where Willem sits. It does seem strange that there happens to be a mini staircase that just abruptly cuts off. It would make more sense if this platform was originally a bridge between what's left of Byrgenwerth and the lecture building. If this theory is true, then perhaps Rom had something to do with the lecture building getting sucked into the nightmare, as where the building previously should have been, now resides the Moonside Lake. The Moonside Lake is a very curious location. It's likely a pocket dimension created by Rom, but there isn't very much going on here. There's no sky, no environmental objects, only this single layer of water. And looking closely at the water, there doesn't seem to be any ground beneath it, even though we are able to stand and walk on it. So just what is going on here exactly? Well, in Mikolash's cut dialogue, he refers to Rom as the downside up fool, which could mean that the entire Moonside Lake is upside down, and what we are walking on is just the underneath surface of the water beneath the lookout. This is also supported by the cutscene we get after killing Rom, in which we see the red moon moving closer to the surface of the water as if it's about to push through the other side. That about does it for my collection of secrets. If you learned something new, please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you to my patrons for your continued support. I have a lot more FromSoft videos planned for the future, but until that time, check out one of these 2 videos on screen. I am sure you will enjoy them.